Hey everyone, I'm Shari Rivkind, co-founder of Bridelawyer.com and a family lawyer for 38 years. Listen up, I'm here to tell you the most important decision you make when you get married isn't the venue, the dress, or even the guest list. It's the talk. I'm talking about the financial talk, the real grown-up issues talk, the how are we actually going to live our lives together talk. Why? Because couples don't fall apart because they stop loving each other. They fall apart because they never talked about how they were actually going to build a life together. Now, before anyone panics, this is not the we need a prenup conversation, although you just might. We'll get there eventually, but this talk is bigger. It's the foundation. Look, I'm mama to 4 30-somethings, and I've seen both sides of my career. I've seen the newly engaged couples glowing, in love, excited to build a life. And I've seen couples in divorce, resentful, exhausted, scared, and tired of fighting. The difference, more often than not, comes down to whether they had this conversation before they got married. Look, when I got married, I thought he was hot, smart, ambitious, came from a good family, and made me laugh. He even loved me to death. I figured that was enough. We never did have that talk. And 20 years later, I realized we really should have. Everybody should. So what do you need to talk about? You're about to find out. Number 1, when you get married, you're forming a financial partnership and more. We all love to talk about marriage as a romantic bond, and it absolutely is. But legally, it's also a financial contract and more. I read somewhere that the biggest financial decision you will ever make is your spouse. And trust me, it is. So how does it work? Everything you owned before the wedding, your savings, your condo, even that ancient Jeep you're still oddly attached to, is your separate property. Everything you both earn or buy with those earnings after you say I do, that's usually marital property, unless you have a prenup that says otherwise. And if you do things like using joint funds to pay the mortgage on a home you owned before, that separate property might turn into ours. That's called commingling, and it happens more often than you think. Today's engaged couples usually find this to be not what they thought. I think the assumption is you get to choose what you're going to do, and while that makes sense today, it didn't when the laws were written, when marriage meant one breadwinner and one homemaker, not 2 professionals splitting a DoorDash account and a mortgage. Today's couples get married later, both work, and often come in with their own assets, retirement accounts, and opinions about money. Some have even lived together for years, splitting the rent and the groceries, but keeping paychecks separate. And assume that setup just keeps rolling after the wedding. Legally, it doesn't. So that hottie you've fallen for, he's more than just your lover and financial partner. Figure you'll put up with the city for a couple more years, as long as that suburban dream house is in your future? Suppose it's not in his. You've each married a doctor. Congratulations. What happens if one of you gets your dream job offer in another state? Oh? Have you thought of that? Suppose you end up in a coma. Is he the type to pull the plug, or would he keep you there for years? Is his dream season's tickets to his favorite team, while yours is a beach house? So a lot of this talk you need to have is about financial things. It goes a whole lot further, right? You're going to find out what his true values are, where she sees herself in the future, his beliefs on money, what it means to be a couple, and even spiritual things. Yes, they say financial reasons are the number 1 reason for divorce, but it's a little more complicated than that. Let's get down to the basics. Number 2, how will you handle everyday money? Let's talk about the present, not the future. Are you two pooling all your income? Keeping separate accounts and paying shared bills proportionally? Or maybe not? Or something in between? Are you planning on continuing what you're doing after the wedding or doing something different? There's no right or wrong answer, but there's one wrong assumption. We'll just figure it out naturally. It'll all work out. No, it won't. Money is not natural. It's emotional. It's charged. It's layered with your upbringing, your family's habits, your fears, and your sense of control. My parents were the type that never had any debt. Credit cards were paid off each month. They lived within their means. My daddy was a doctor, but we lived nicely, but not overly fancy. No beach houses, vacations were rare, and a fancy restaurant was only for special occasions. My ex, different story. His daddy was pretty much a self-made rags to riches story. Poor wives pretty much put him back into rags again at the end. My ex was a risk taker. I don't follow the rules guide. What's the big deal if I don't file my taxes on time? Type of guy. I'll never forget the first year after we first got married, when my mom opened up a letter sent by the IRS for me to her house looking for my tax return. This was the first one since we were married, which wasn't yet filed. She flipped out. All her unspoken concerns about who I was marrying and who I had married came out, and then some. Money and finances come with attitudes. So start here. How did your families handle money when you were growing up? Was it talked about openly or totally off limits? Were you taught to save every penny or spend while you can? Keep in mind those attitudes you grew up with will keep you up at night, let alone be the cause of dozens of worried texts from your parents. How do each of you feel about debt? Does it keep you up at night? Or do you shrug and say, everybody has student loans. What's the big deal? It's funny. I came from a mixed set of parents. My mom was really more the saver, the investor, the shop at discount stores when she could well afford the fancy ones. My daddy, he was the spender, a tech junkie. He generally had the newest gadget. From the 70s to the 80s, he had an entire wall dedicated to his stereo equipment and proudly would show me how they were all connected to one another. I had two sisters. Dory has always been the saver from when we were kids. Robin, my oldest sister, she buys, but only the very best. Me, more spender than saver, which gets us to being financially secure. What does financial security mean to you? Is it a number in the bank? A fully funded 401k? Or just knowing that the bills are paid and you can breathe? As my mom used to say, money doesn't grow on trees. You have to plan on the long term. Social Security, if it's still there, will not provide you a life in your future years. And who's to say those children of yours will be able to or will want to take care of you? You need to prepare for the future and know what that means to you together. What feels like a good spend and what feels wasteful? Do you value experiences over things? Or do you love having the latest tech, car, or handbag? You have to come to a recognition of each other's spending habits. Otherwise, discontent will grow. Maybe you're okay right now that he's living in designer cashmere when you can barely cover your bills, yet he expects you to pick up dinner bill here or there. After all, that's what people do today, right? Or maybe you think he's a real Scrooge, saving every last dime, while your idea of a night out is to the hottest restaurant in town, not the local Shake Shack. You guys will get along fine in the short term, but long term, one of you will blow. Get to an understanding before you are married. let's talk income. Are you both earning about the same? Or not even close? If one of you makes more, how do you both feel about that? Is the higher earner willing to share freely or to keep things proportional? Does the lower earner feel that's fair? And what happens if your roles reverse? Or if one of you stops working for a while? Whether it's to have kids, school, for health. Most people think a prenup is just about protecting what you owned before or any inheritances you get. This is where a good prenup really comes in, helping you have a roadmap for those marital earnings to make sure you're in agreement about how things will go. And by knowing it, you'll avoid huge fights down the road. The kind of fights that break up couples. Here's the truth. You don't have to think exactly alike. But if you're not at least on the same wavelength, you'll hit big problems fast. He's a saver, you're a spender. Okay, maybe a compromise. One vacation a year instead of 2. Or you only, after the IRA contributions are made, go on that vacation. And maybe you'll even save in other areas to make Tahiti happen. He makes more and wants expenses split by income, but that leaves you short on your own bills? You gotta talk that through now. Because if you can't find a middle ground, you'll end up stressed, broke, and resentful, wondering why you married someone who makes more but shares less. They say love is blind. Maybe. But financial denial? That's marriage suicide. Have the talk. Find the compromise. And yes, protect yourselves with a prenup. Because if you can't agree on how to handle everyday money, you're not ready to merge lives or bank accounts.